I'm a Rhodes Scholar now. Getting the Rhodes Scholarship for me, I feel like there was a huge amount of like luck.
This is Ewerechukwu Asaka, a Rhodes Scholar pursuing an MBA at Oxford Side Business School, a first-class holder, 2021 Best Graduating Student and valedictorian at the renowned Convenience University in Nigeria. Before Oxford, she was a product manager at Spotify, working on efforts to adapt the platform for emerging markets. She has also worked with Kugali, the African animation studio behind Disney's Emmy-nominated Iwaju. She has worked at MasterCard, Andela, and KPMG. Her experiences spanning products, operations, and technology advisory across Africa and beyond. I think I read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1,
Mm.
and in chapter 1 of 0 to 1, he wrote, all Rhodes Scholar had a great future in the past. And I was like, yes. So, what do you think of that statement actually? How do you pronounce your name?
Ewerechukwu. Ewere. It
Ewere.
means
Okay.
God's blessings, favor, good tidings. Yeah.
It means God's blessings, favor, good tidings.
Everything. Yeah.
Oh,
Good
cool.
tidings, basically.
Okay, awesome. um, so tell me, what was it like for you growing up?
Um, I think very, very, I think very interesting in its own way. So I think I was given I like initially started with the fact that I come from a family of four. So it's my parents and then my younger brother. So very small nuclear family. And then we're also very close knit, even when you consider like with my extended family, like my uncles, my aunties. So basically, when you say it takes a village to raise a child, I really was raised by a village, like my parents, my aunties, cousins, and so that's one of the key things I remember from my childhood. And then I also remember that another very key bit will be my dad really liking education. So I told you that I had like a lesson teacher, what we call lesson
When
teacher
you were
in
two?
Nigeria, from like two. So it's like you go home. So it's like you were not even given a chance to fail or something.
Mhm.
And then I think I've always been a very relatively quiet, reserved child. Maybe not quiet, like being a pushover per se, but not necessarily the type to want to go and play in the sand. So I've just
Mhm.
always found solace in like books, my teddy bears. I teach my teddy bears, and so that's what I really remember from like childhood and like growing up. It's just been like family, my dad's love for education, you constantly trying to, I'll say maybe putting the best in your own way. And then it now morphed into other like intentional parts as you start to like get older.
Mhm.
Yeah. Was there any specific part you wanted me to highlight?
Oh, I'm actually super interested in like your dad, right? Was there a reason he was super into education? Was he like a smart person himself? Why?
So I guess like I think the one thing is that when you talk to me, always just I can't go like 30 minutes in the conversation without like talking about my dad. Shout
Oh,
out to
well, you
him for
can.
everything.
It's okay.
So I think yeah, so my dad grew up in my dad grew up in the village but moved to the city, had to see himself through like university at some like and then he also has like an MBA. I always joke about how I can't be the first to have an MBA in my house or anything because he's done that. But he's always really liked education because for him it's one way to sort of redefine your life or change the outcomes of your life. And he's always been a very smart person. He's always excelled academically. So it's one of those things where you put in like hard work and you see effort and reward. So coming from that like background from where he started to where he got to or where he's been able to get to through education, he's like, this is one of the things I can really leave as a legacy for my children or use leave like I give my children to sort of make their way through life. Because for him, he was like, I might not buy the flashiest or large houses or cars, but I'm really going to try to ensure that you go to the best schools that I can afford or best schools in the area. And he's like, for him, even when he like choosing universities and things like that, he's like, oh, what are their rankings, accreditations, and it's like it's not just about going to a school. how well are they faring in that country. So he's been very, very intentional. So that really affected choices like schools, even like choices of courses, feedback during examination. So my dad is not the type to say, "Oh, you came first. That is great." No, he's the type to take your report card, go through the teacher's comments, go through your exam scripts, and he will
Mm-hmm.
now be like, "So I see that you do very well in theory because you have a lot more room to write more, but you don't do very well in objectives. And objectives is the true test because there's only one correct answer. And for you to be able to
Okay.
spot out is so he's that type of person to want to know the mindset that you were in when you went into the exam hall. So
Mm-hmm.
you know it's not just about coming home with a first position. It's about like how well did I do? What are my strengths and my weaknesses? How do we improve on this for like next term? I always tell people that my dad was the first person to teach me how to calculate the CGPA. So he's been like, he's like, back in the day, CGPAs used to have this weights in like 100 level versus 400 level. It used to weigh more, but now it weighs equally across board. So if you do very well in 100 level,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like an extension of secondary school. It's stuff you know already. If you get a very high CGPA in 100 level, it will most likely see you through 400. So he's been that very involved in like my education, my interest, my career. And I think it stems from the fact that he also like his mom, although she didn't go to school, she also supported him to the best of her ability. So I think that there's that too. So he's always been he's an OG. He will read with me, wake me up at night to read when I need that stuff like that. So yeah.
Really? That is so cool.
Yeah.
Uh, so do you like remember times from your like primary school years? Were you like always a top student? What were you like?
Um, so I think this is also an interesting thing where I have some vague recollection, but people's recollections might differ. I think from like nursery, maybe early primary, very early primary. It was just, I think the awards I remember getting were like best behaved or well behaved. So I was just like a good, well behaved child. But I think where it really kicked off was like primary three or primary four. And I think there are a couple of influences that I clearly remember at that time. One, I had a lesson teacher, Mr. Dozie, God rest his soul. He was very intentional about like teaching me like how to think through things as opposed to just coming first. There was that. And I think also something shifted. There's a particular course where I got like really high marks. And I was like, oh, I can replicate this. I can do this in
Mm-hmm.
other places.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was just this whole focus on at that time was like, oh, personal effort, you reading on your own and things like that. So I guess it was like a mix of different factors, but that's when I actively remember now coming top of class or being in held in a conversation like the academic conversation or academic excellence now starting to be my thing. That's when I actually
Mm-hmm.
remember that. So for primary three, primary four, up until now, that feels like a very long time ago. But I know it wasn't always like the case for a short period. Yeah.
I think this is a really good one. The how do you say it now? The fact that you were able to like pinpoint that there was like a
Yeah.
tipping point,
Yeah.
and being able to like see to that. Oh, I think there was a reason that
Mm-hmm.
that tipping point
Yeah.
happened. So I think ultimately the question, like a spin-off from this in a sense, is like, do you think this is like, say, like intelligence outlier, being an outlier in a sense, right? Do you think it is like nature or nurture, or do you think it's both? What do you think?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. I think the first thing is we have to recognize that there are different types of intelligence. Like I think that's also something that I'm starting to understand. And in Nigeria, it looks like there's only one type that is 10. You're frozen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. So in Nigeria, it always feels like there's one type of intelligence that's like emphasized or heavily rewarded. But there are also various forms of intelligence. I think that's where the nature bit comes to play. Like my brother is very artistic, and he's not the type to care about academic excellence. So even though we grew up in like very similar environments and applying the same formula for the two of us, or the two of us now bringing
So you
might
were
not necessarily
subjected to the same condition
not the
by your
same
dad.
exactly. I think when my dad realized that this is a different child, he
Okay,
had
okay,
to change the approach in a
okay.
way. So my brother likes art. I think at some point my dad got him like a lot of art materials. Spoke to the art teacher and was like, "Oh, I really want to take interest in art and do all of that." My brother
Mm-hmm,
stopped going to classes and he was like, "I want to be an artist." I was like, "He cannot work in Nigeria."
mm-hmm,
I'm around like sports. For me, I've never necessarily really liked sports or art. Like I like arts.
mm-hmm,
Um, I like music, I like film, but my academics and like I just genuinely like that sort of became my identity. So it was just like something I naturally gravitated towards. So
mm-hmm,
I think there's the nature bit definitely where people have things that they naturally like align with and like excel at, and you have certain like abilities. But I think the nurture bit is also very, very key. And it's not always intentional, but at some point,
mm-hmm,
there's an intent that carries it through. So nurture regards like for me, I had like a very intentional dad. I had very intentional aunties and uncles. My mom also played a huge role in like keeping me grounded. So for my mom and my dad too, beyond just academic excellence, how grounded as a person are you? Like, can you hold a conversation? Do you have proper social interactions? Are you a good friend? And things like that. So these are conversations you also like have. For my dad, he really tried to get me into sports. But the the nurture bits, that's one thing with my dad. But I also know people who it might not necessarily be might not having parents. It could just be like someone like my dad who realized that education is really important and it's one way to get me out of this place, that current situation that I'm in now. And then they actively, intentionally build towards getting like good grades and like
mm-hmm,
intelligence. So I think it's and then that now sort of leads to them being an outlier due to the amount of like hard work, effort, and things put into it. So I think it's a mix of both. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Interesting. So I think I want your opinion on this idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was something that I was debating with my co-founder lately, right? And I think my own position on that was that you could look at like with most things in life, and I'm asking this because it is sort of like a spin-off from what you said to about having some parameters put in place for you that allow for that takeoff to
Mm-hmm.
happen, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think what the argument really was about was that if you talk to people who are successful, right, there's usually like you have a certain, maybe a percentage of them will say that all of this is luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's another group of people who say, "Oh, I wasn't lucky at all. I worked hard, right? I built the shit brick by brick."
Mm-hmm.
There's
Brick
that
by brick.
category. There's that
Yes.
category of people too, right? And I think for me, what said was that I believe that this thing is like in between. But in fact, I said it's luck is like actually I think I said luck is 100% of it,
Yes.
right? And I meant that in the sense that, of course, like the 50% that is luck, and the other 50%, which is hard work and all of those things. I think what I argued for was that those things you don't get to take credit for being hardworking too, right?
Yes.
Because if you're hardworking at a thing, it is because like you've been condemned to be hardworking at that thing. Like
Yeah.
every conversation you've chanced on, the people you've met, everything has primed you in sort of a way that you have no other option than just to be hardworking. Like you cannot will your way into it. What is your stance on this?
Um, I think it's a mix. Like, see, the one answer that I've seen that get me through a lot of things that it depends, and it's a mix of things, and it's in between, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I agree with you, and this is why I agree with you. There's something called like there's something people say like the lock surface area where
Would you tell me if you disagreed with me?
no, I'm very honest. I'll tell you if I disagree with you, I'll tell
Okay,
you.
cool, cool.
As like the log surface area where you
Mm-hmm.
increase your chances of being lucky.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I'll use my story as like a journey where getting like I'm a Rhodes Scholar now, and getting the Rhodes Scholarship for me, I feel like there was a huge amount of like luck, right? And like I feel like there's been a huge amount of luck in like my journey to Oxford, and also being a Christian, there's like faith, there's like religion, there's that bit. But then there are other Christians and other people who have Rhodes, other people are not Christians, and other people who have this Rhodes scholarship who don't necessarily feel like there was any luck or thing that they worked for it and they got it. So I guess like your perspective also influences how you think about these things. But with like log surface area, what I'm trying to say now is to get like Rhodes, you need to get like a first class. And like certain courses in Oxford require you to have like a first class. For me, I went to Covenant University and I studied computer science. So my dad was also very intentional about me going to Covenant University, and then I was like, okay, I think I like computer science. Now, if you compare my story to someone who probably went to another school where we know how Nigerian schools can be, I'm not one to not recognize my privilege. Who went to another school, who probably went to another department where it's a bit tough. Like even in Covenant University, when people say, oh, you graduated with the perfect CGPA, I'm like, I recognize that, but I recognize that doing it in computer science is different from doing it in an engineering. So there are different factors at play. It could just be one amount of like luck, right? And like I feel like it's been a huge amount of luck in like my journey to Oxford, and also being a Christian, there's like faith, there's like religion, there's that bit. But then there are other Christians and other people who have Rhodes, other people are not Christians, and other people who have this Rhodes scholarship who don't necessarily feel like there was any luck or thing that like they worked for it and they got it. So I guess like your perspective also influences how you think about these things. But with like log surface area, what I'm trying to say now is to get like Rhodes, you need to get like a first class. And like certain courses in Oxford require you to have like a first class. For me, I went to Covenant University and I studied computer science. So my dad was also very intentional about me going to Covenant University, and then I was like, okay, I think I like computer science. Now, if you compare my story to someone who probably went to another school where we know how Nigerian schools can be, I'm not one to not recognize my privilege. Who went to another school, who probably went to another department where it's a bit tough. Like even in Covenant University, when people say, oh, you graduated with the perfect CGPA, I'm like, I recognize that, but I recognize that doing it in computer science is different from doing it in an engineering. So there are different factors at play. It could just be one lecturer who took away one mark from you or something. That's where I think like, but there's also the hard work bit where you work hard, your peer. I'm lucky to be born into the home that I was born into to have the parents that I have. So it's a mix of different things where you recognize that your story is not just hinging on one thing. And if you're able to like drill down into different factors, you can see how much luck plays a role. You can see how much hard work plays a role. But the thing I was coming to with like luck surface area is that if I didn't get a first class, I probably would not be eligible to apply for like the Rhodes Scholarship. So even if I was going to go to, or if I didn't get a first class, I probably would not be eligible to apply for like the Rhodes Scholarship. So even if I was going to go to Oxford through another means, maybe another scholarship, another funding, still perfect, still good, still nice. But because I had a first class, increased my log surface area, my ability to at least be successful at Rhodes. And then going to apply for Rhodes, there are other different factors too that would have increased my probability. But getting chosen is still lucky. It's still lucky in like the sense, but there are other factors that play a role. So I think it's a mix of different things. But I think being very self-aware, being very reflective to understand what plays a role and recognizing when it's luck and when other things, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
What do you think about it? I feel like you feel like it depends and you feel like it's 100% luck.
Uh, I actually do feel like it's 100% luck. Right. Uh,
Yeah, I agree. There are some things that have happened where I'm like, okay, I'm happy, I'm really privileged to be in this position, but yeah.
but I think the nuance is there somewhere, right? Because
Yes.
when I like insisting that it's 100% luck, I'm not saying that there's no hard work, there's no grit and all of that. I'm just
Mhm.
saying that, let me use a scriptural reference, if you don't, of
Mhm.
course you don't mind.
I'm very
So
Christian, I don't mind.
yeah, right. I remember that midway into my question. So it's like you could take that would be the best analogy for this now. Right, you could take, I don't know if it was Elisha or Elijah, right?
Mm,
That okay, let's even take Abraham. That is the popular one, right? A lot of people like talk about Abraham and they'll say, oh, Abraham believed God and it was counted to him unto righteousness, something like that, right? And I think if you ask the average person, that, oh, why do you think this guy was called the father of faith? People would say, oh, someone that was going to kill his child. Come on, that is like outlier faith. But I think if you really check that story there, it wasn't shocking. I don't think it shocked God that the guy was going to kill his child. It was
Yeah.
expected, right? Because this was someone that he had been training him to do that all his life, right? So this was someone that was in his village. The guy said, Alpha, get up, you're going elsewhere. Oh, you're going to have a child. It makes no sense. You had it. Tell your brother to leave here. And you did all of that. If he tells him to kill the child, of course, he knows that this person is going to do it, right? It's the same way the story of the woman that like gave a last meal to the prophet too. Apparently, if you read the pretext of it, she had been doing that, right? And I think that was what I meant by like even hard work in itself is not something that a lot of people would think that maybe they watched someone, for instance, or they sat down, they thought about their life, and they say, "Okay,
This
I want to
person just
change
had
my
it.
life." Exactly, or they believe that someone can just sit down and say, "Oh, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to work hard." It really doesn't work that way, right? Like it's like a thousand. It's either a million little miracles that have happened or a million little deaths
Yeah.
so far that has condemned you to your fate, whether good or bad. So I think it's in that
True.
sense that I meant that in the end, all of it is still luck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I digress. The So of course you're a Rhodes Scholar. By the way, like super respect, maximum respect. I don't know.
Maximum respect to you
Yeah.
too.
No,
We'll
no,
just
no, no,
invite each
no,
other on this
no,
call.
no,
This is
no,
how
no,
we'll
no,
be
no, no,
doing
no.
it.
You
How
don't
we'll
get
do
it,
it with
right?
David.
No, I think no, I think Rhodes Scholarship. But yeah, I digress. The So of course you're a Rhodes Scholar. By the way, like super respect, maximum respect. I don't know.
Maximum respect to you
Yeah.
too.
No,
We'll
no,
just
no, no,
invite each
no,
other on this
no,
call.
no,
This is
no,
how
no,
we'll
no,
be
no, no,
doing
no.
it.
You
How
don't
we'll
get
do
it,
it with
right?
David.
No, I think Rhodes Scholarship was one of those things that I wanted, and when I could, like God just it was just like, no, you're never getting this, right? I could not have gotten it, right? But I really wanted it for like the prestige. Come on, it's don't let me talk about it. You will see when I'm talking about it that I was obsessed with it, right? I really wanted it. And I so wanted it that when I realized that I'm never going to get this, or that I'm not going to get this thing, I started to eat Rhodes Scholars, right? Then I was like, bullshit. And then I think I read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And in chapter 1 of 0 to 1, he wrote, all Rhodes Scholar had a great future in the past. And I was like, yes, yes. Right? I'm like, yes. So what do you think of that statement, actually? Like that, what Peter Thiel wrote, and it was an argument against, I can't say intellectualism, it's more like education, right? This part or whatever. I think that was what it was arguing against. And he said all Rhodes Scholar had a great future in the past. Do you understand the statement? Is there something you can comment on already? Do you agree with it? Do you know cases otherwise? You think it was stupid?
I have some comments and I have some hot take, but maybe you should shed more light on the context in which he said that. Yeah.
Okay, so I think he started it by saying, I think the title of the chapter was Competition is
Mm.
for Losers,
Oh, okay.
right? Competition is for losers. And he was saying that
Mhm.
Rhodes Scholar are like a group of people that have been trained to like sit at desks, to take notes a particular way, to answer questions a particular way.
Oh,
And they've
yeah.
gone through their life doing this. Do you get it now?
How I'm interpreting it is that in the past there were certain skills that were favored or certain things that would make you successful, which like the
Mm-hmm,
Rhodes Scholarship primes you for. So back in
mm-hmm.
the day, as a Rhodes Scholar, you almost always had like a great future or certain things. Um, I disagree.
Okay.
Like
Of
I
course, you
disagree because I
disagree.
wanted to get the full context and then
Mm-hmm,
disagree because obviously I have a great future now in the present, but
mm-hmm,
majorly because I think for anybody that has gone through the application process, and I'll just start from like the application process in my experience now. If you've gone through the application process on like your own, like you actually went through that process and applied and sent in something to the scholarship committee,
mm-hmm,
at least from my experience, that whole application process forces you to sit with yourself and ask yourself key and critical questions. And then if you look at the criteria, academic excellence is like the base. It's like it's guaranteed. You have to be this. But then
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, they're looking at like leadership, empathy, your ability to speak up for the selfless and vulnerable in society. So it's not just smart people. There's also the bit on like how have you used your talents to the fullest or social situation. So it's not just smart people, it's smart people who have gone the extra mile and people who are sort of in a way dedicated to giving back and building things. I mean, like my first week, I can't remember what Mary's role is now, but she was like, there's so many Rhodes scholars who are so dedicated to giving back. I really want all of you to start making money so you can give back to scholarships
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So that whole application process, like even if I didn't get it, like get in, I remember telling one of the finalists that I'm going to go to Oxford with or without Rhodes, and they just need to get in line and be part of my story. I don't know where that confidence came from, but when time I had done that process, I had done the interview, prepared for the interview, I was very convinced that I wanted this path and I wanted to go to Oxford to study the course that I wanted to study and what it was going to do for my career and like my future. So that is what key bit. And I think anybody that's able to, any 24-hour roads, and they just need to get in line and be part of my story. I don't know where that confidence came from, but when time I had done that process, I had done the interview, prepared for the interview, I was very convinced that I wanted this path and I wanted to go to Oxford to study the course that I wanted to study and what it was going to do for my career and like my future. So that is one key bit. And I think anybody that's able to, any 24 to 20, like any 20 to 26-year-old that's able to take out time to actually critically think about their career and their future is already a step ahead of others because you're at that phase of your life, you're just looking for what next? Uni, NYSC, a job, and you're not necessarily thinking, how do I want to impact or change the world or drawing that line between your career to greater impact. So that is one step. So, and you don't need a Rhodes Scholarship application to do it. I'm just saying that that application forces you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get to the finally stage, and this is my experience as like from the West African constituency, you meet other finalists who are equally as inspired. And in as much as it goes to the whole competition aspect of it, they try to not make it as look like a competition. They try to make it look like you're building community. And there's just something about seeing people who are incredible and awesome and using all the parts of their brain. I always look like you guys are so smart. There's just something it does to you that it one gives you like hope that oh there's hope for the future. Two, I can actually do more. Three, I'm not alone in this thing. So there's just something about that. And that's like your community. You sort of build like a new community or have new network or new contacts as you start to navigate this new part of your journey with or without Rhodes. And then when you get to Oxford, that community increases. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm meeting people who are doing or thinking about problems from like how it affects the environment, law, religion, health, the internet and technology, business and finance. These are people who are actively applying their talents and thinking about how they can help the vulnerable in their different communities from these different angles. And I think these are key qualities that would never go and finance. These are people who are actively applying their talents and thinking about how they can help the vulnerable in their different communities from these different angles. And I think these are key qualities that will never go out of style. They will always be relevant to ensuring that people have like a great future or whatever. How you now define success or a great future depends on you. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to end up as like Bill Clinton, but in whatever career I've chosen or whatever path I've chosen, I'm sort of making impact and still staying true to the initial tenets that made me a Rhodes Scholar, which I think will always be valid. As long as I'm able to use my talents and capacities to the full, I'm caring about the vulnerable in society.
Wow.
And there's the baseline academic excellence. I
Mm-hmm.
really think that your future will be great today, tomorrow,
Uh,
yesterday. Yeah.
okay, I think I
That
really get it now.
that's
Mm-hmm.
how yeah.
I think I really get it because I think the last thing you said really addressed what Peter
Yeah.
Thiel was
Yeah.
talking about. You know, Silicon Valley defines success a particular way, right? And
Yes.
for him, what he was trying to say is that, oh, these people who win Rhodes Scholarship, they are these people that are perfect. You would expect them to go on
Mhm.
to like do remarkable stuff, but that you go back and check them maybe 30 years down the line and they're still introducing themselves as Rhodes Scholars, right? Like, what have you done? No, right? I think that is what he meant. But
Yeah.
what you have said now that in the end, you get to like define success for yourself, and it's not
Yes.
success is not what does Silicon Valley or what does my industry think of this. It's a personal thing. I don't know. I don't quite agree, but I feel you. feel you. But yeah, that is super super
I
cool.
think you don't agree because you're Nigerian.
Ah, and you are what? Why don't you
Well,
agree?
see, this
Hmm.
is two one. Initially, I was just like, I don't want to live a life where it is like I go to school, marry, buy a car, rent the house for a bit, and die. I want money. Pick capital. Like when you grow up in a capitalist society, I want money. I want
You
this. I
are.
want the whether it's to help the needy in society, whether it's to trample on my enemies, I
Hmm.
want money. But then I think living in Sweden for a while, I think I started to understand
Ah,
that there's a lot more to it. There's a tendency to get complacent, but there's a lot
okay.
more to life than actually just chasing money and chasing certain metrics that a heavily capitalist society conditions you to chase or define success as.
Like, you're like so right. Actually, this is, and I didn't know that this was like you saying it this way. I felt seen in a sense, right? But I didn't know it was a function of Nigeria. I thought it was a function of the books that I had read, right?
Okay.
But like that was the reason I could not stand being in Europe. Actually, like I just could not stand the idea of it. People were like happy in Switzerland. It didn't make sense to me. Like, okay, what are you earning? You're like, it didn't make sense to me. Like, these people just want to relax and be taken care of. They're fine.
They
Uh,
just want to be able to go on their vacations, take time off with their children. I remember the first time like I saw like the head of HR cycling on a bicycle into the office. I was like, no, can't be.
no,
Can't
God.
be.
Yes, so right.
Like there's no way I'm this comfortable with this life. No. I get it.
I
That's
remember.
like
I think I remember asking a lecturer of mine when I was in Germany. So we were like walking down together, and I asked her, "Are you fine? Like, why don't you?" And in my head, she was poor, right? That's the reason she asked to like walk to school, and it was actually like chose to do that.
mhm.
And it made no sense to me. Now I understand it. It's still
Yes.
okay. I'm not going to comment on it, but yeah, I think it's. I find it interesting. Also, I find it more interesting that you were able to break free from it. I
I've not
did
broken
not.
free actually. I, s-
Oh,
I just acknowledge it.
oh,
I
okay,
just acknowledge it. I'm not
okay.
broken free. I'm not
Ah,
broken free yet. Yeah.
okay, okay. Real cool, real cool. So you said something earlier when you talked about like meeting a scholar during the Rhodes interview
Mm,
thing. Um, I still did vex. Anyways, well, yeah, you mentioned that you told the person that you're going to go to Oxford.
it was like it was a finalist. A very
Okay,
first finalist
okay,
interview.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, and it's a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I said you told the person, and then you have to clarify
Yeah.
what's a finalist.
No, it was like it was another finalist. I think I said it's scholars. I was like, it was just like during our finalist interview. So
Okay, 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 okay. That makes sense.
yeah.
Oh, I think I meant scholar in the sense of the Nigerian sense of scholar.
Okay,
You
yes,
get
yes. Okay,
right.
yes. Valid, valid.
So, so you said you told the person right that you're going to go to Oxford with or without the Rhodes Scholar, and that this
Mm-hmm.
is just you giving them an opportunity to be a part of the story, right? Like getting your that was it for you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
did you always have that? At what other points in life did you like have this clarity on stuff or like this thing that is borderline arrogance?
So no, I don't think it's even arrogance because
Of course.
I'm not even so I think it's a mix of different things. So I think unlike you, aspire to certain things, but I don't aspire that far ahead. So in uni,
Did you always have that? At what other points in life did you like have this clarity on stuff or like this thing that is borderline arrogance?
so no, I don't think it's even arrogance because
Of course.
I'm not even so I think it's a mix of different things. So I think unlike you, aspire to certain things, but I don't aspire that far ahead. So in uni, my
Mhm.
goal was like I just want to finish with a perfect CGPA. what I'm going to use this perfect CGPA and do, I don't know. And then it's been very, I've been the type to really struggle. Like, I don't know if it's cultural, if it's like Christianity, if it's also been like maybe raised as a woman, like different layers where you don't necessarily like advocate for yourself or you don't brag on about what you've done. So it's something I've also had to actively like unlearn where because I remember my like straight out of undergrad, I got into like Spotify. Like one of my first performance reviews, my manager was like, I'm not your teacher looking to mark you or something. It's a
Mm,
conversation what you've been doing so far. And please come confidently speaking about the things you've done well
mm,
and advocate for yourself, basically. So it's a mix of different things where I'm like, I've done good work. People will know about it. People should know and it should speak for itself. Yes, there's that. But then there's also, I think, I won't call it manifestation or words of affirmation. We also believe that your tongue is powerful. So I'm also the type to be like, I don't necessarily believe that this is happening now, but I'm going to speak it into existence with like
mm,
faith. The two different angles. But in that particular scenario, it was that I have all the qualifications to get into Oxford.
mhm,
And I know if I send in an application tomorrow, it's two things. It goes to the point where we're talking about like how you built yourself up and how the different stories that come together. So sitting on that table there, I was just like, if I send an application to Oxford tomorrow, I'm going to get it. And
mhm.
that is like I'm going to go to Oxford with or without Rhodes. Where the funding will come from is what we don't know now. And this is where they have a chance to say, okay, they are contributing. So I don't think it was more arrogant. I don't think it was arrogant. I think it was just me being factual because I had you think about like counting your cost. My friend has always been telling me, so I had counted the cost at that time. I'm like, I know I can get into Oxford, and I'm
Mhm.
qualified not to get into Oxford. I probably wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have had the same. This is what I'm getting to. I wouldn't have had the same confidence to say that in like 100 level when I was just in Covenant, still doing what I'm going to be a Rhodes Scholar. I'm going to go to Oxford with or without that. And I'm
Mhm.
qualified not to get into Oxford. I probably wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have had the same. This is what I'm getting to. I wouldn't have had the same confidence to say that in like 100 level when I was just in Covenant, still doing what I'm going to be a Rhodes Scholar. I'm going to go to Oxford with or without them. But
Mhm.
looking at that point, I looked at everything and I'm like, I can and I will. And obviously, it doesn't always work out. But I'm like pretty sure that I'll get in with or
Ah,
without.
okay.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay.
I don't think it's arrogance.
Oh,
Oh
it's okay
God.
if it is arrogant. I am arrogant, and I'm always looking to recruit people to the team. But it's okay. We lost one there. That's fine. The Rhodes application, all of those things. Like, how did you decide to even try for the Rhodes Scholarship? How did you hear about it? Uh, and what was the application procedure like?
Again, shout out to my dad.
Mm.
So um I had been working at Spotify for about 2 years and I finally went back home. I think a year, almost it was going to be 2 years, like in a few
Wait,
months. So I
so this
went
was
back home.
Spotify Sweden, right?
Yes, Sweden. So
Okay.
I went back to like Nigeria and
Mhm.
then my dad sat me down and said, "Oh, I think you should apply like for your masters." You know the way Nigerian parents feel about like masters as
Mhm.
eh, you need your masters both for bragging rights to secure your career, to show that you're educated. They just like you need your masters. It's a cultural thing because I was looking at um because I was really debating if I wanted a master's. I was looking at like product managers that I looked up to or I admired their career growth. And it was a mix of different things. Some had like PhDs, some didn't even go to uni in the traditional sense.
Mhm.
Some maybe did undergrad. Yeah. And I just realized that experience is really key and important. Your understanding of the job, not necessarily like your master's or your degree. But then for some people, it really helps. And I think for me, I also really wanted to explore um, school outside of Nigeria. I really liked the course I wanted to apply to at that time. So I was like, okay, I had been flirting with the idea, but no decision yet because I felt like I was still comfortable where I was. So my dad sat me down. He said, I think it's time for you to apply to like for your master's. If you're applying to the US, you should apply to an Ivy League school. And if you're applying to the UK, it's Oxford or Cambridge, Oxbridge. And I don't mind selling everything that I have for you to go to Oxford.
Ooh.
I'm like, I'm like, Chairman, school fees is like 30K, 40. What do you want to sell at this exchange rate to carry us to Oxford? Like, please. Because I'm just like, this man is telling me two things. You have to get that master's and you have to get a scholarship because I'm not going to put my parents through and everything they have just games Oxford. Like
Mm-hmm.
degrees are nice, but I think like they are not necessarily the only thing that can get you to where you want to be in life. And I already had like I was talking to my mentor. She was like, "You have a job that people are doing master, like a master's degree to get."
Mm-hmm.
So like if you look at the Nigerian context where people leave and try to do a master's degree to get into certain careers, so you also have to consider that in like when you're making your plans. But then I spoke to Motunrayo Ajia, who like she's like the first CU grad person like graduate to have like a perfect CGPA. She was at Oxford at that time. She had tried for Rhodes a couple of like two. She was like she's a Rhodes finalist. So she's an amazing, brilliant woman. And I had a conversation with her, and she was like, one, I had really good grades in uni, so I knew I wasn't going to be paying for my master's. They had to count for something. And I think my dad had a conversation with me in June. I think I spoke to Mutun like the next day or the week after. And I was like, okay, Rhodes is still open. Should I apply? She was like, you lose nothing when you apply. Like my best friend was like, the worst thing you do is like no. And yeah, I used to know. I've told you no now. Did you die? Go no. Like no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you should apply. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I'm still at the sweet spot where it's like I'm mid-career. My age still like my technically I was still like age-wise, I was still able to apply degree and everything. So I'm like, I made most of the recommendations and the qualifications here. So I definitely should try my luck and apply. But then I didn't feel like I was Rhodes material. I just felt like they wanted very aspirational people who are like, oh, I know some people like I from my early age, I've been doing this, I've changed the world, I've done that. And I'm just like, I don't think I'm this person. But Motu was like, apply. And Fisayo was like, Fisayo and so my best friend were like, apply. So the application had been open for I think 2 months already. So I had 1 month to put together an application by the time I was having these conversations. Um, so I decided to apply. And I if you know the process, you need like at least 4 recommendation letters. You need to write on like an essay. So it's a very tasking process.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to start reaching out to all my lecturers. Thankfully, when I went to Nigeria the other time, even without thinking about it or anything, I went to pay them a visit and just like, hey, hi, I'm here. So it was very easy reestablishing that connection and asking them for certain things. So I put everything together. Um, and I was ready to apply. This is where it gets tricky. And I'm just like, definitely God was involved. So there was a question in the application form that I had misinterpreted and gave a wrong answer to. So by the time I was done, I think this was like 2 days to the application. The application it closed on a Monday evening or so. And I was like, by Friday evening, I was done. But you know, this thing where I don't want to let this thing go. You know, it's like I can wait till the last minute to submit. But I was like, I've reviewed this thing. I think I'm really ready to submit. And then I submitted, and my application progress wiped, like it cleared.
Mm-hmm.
So I was now on my own Friday night sitting. I said, Fisayo is my, I called Fisayo, I said, Fisayo, we don't have the letters. That's the key component. And your lecturers have to upload the letters, like both your academic and your character referees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can reapply because I have the other documents, but I don't have the letters. And I don't know how I'm going to call my lecturers to re-upload reference letters on a Friday evening for something that's due on Monday evening when they've already done it before. And I know how I followed up on them to get to this stage. And she was like, just do it. So I had to send emails all of them, call all of them, explained what happened. I tried to contact like the application, but to see if they could restore the progress. They couldn't. They was like, you have to get them to send it again. And thankfully, they sent it again. I think the last one sent it like an hour too. I think he was even traveling. He was not with his laptop or so. So he was like, I promise you, I will send this thing before the deadline. Just, you told me I'll send it in. And then I financed it. So I think when I look back at that process, the first thing I came to mind was like, if I had waited till like Monday midnight to submit and I didn't catch that error, I definitely would have missed out on that. Um, and then the only person I told was like my mom, and she was just praying for me. I couldn't tell my dad because he was way too invested in the process. Worst case scenario, I just told him that, oh, I didn't get in. So we sent in the application, and then after that, there's like a short list where you have to start preparing for like interviews. And I think this also goes back to like the luck conversation that we're having. If you look at like historically, a lot of the Rhodes Scholars and finalists have been Nigerians. Like we have the numbers, we have a lot more people that are interested. Oxford is like Anglophone. So in West Africa, it tends to favor Nigerians and Ghanaians. So it means that a Nigerian Rhodes Scholar applying has a lot more Nigerian Rhodes Scholars to look up to, or Nigerian Rhodes Scholars that are most likely to be in their circles to reach out to ask for help. And if you have a lot more people to ask for help or to ask what their experience was like, you're a lot more likely to succeed. So these are the things that like might make you feel lucky but if you drill down, there are other things at play. So I spoke to like outside of Motun, I spoke to a couple of like Rhodes finalists and Rhodes mostly Rhodes finalists, asking them what the experiences were like, how the interviews went for them. And I think one key thing that someone told me um was that actually two friends, David David Nottage, who shout out to David, he sat me down through the whole process, was there, like had so many mock interviews with me. And basically what he told me was that you're not applying to like an Oxford technical committee. So they're not necessarily subject matter experts on your course. But what you want to tell them is your story and where you're going to, or things you believe, how you can believe you can change the world, and what the missing gaps are, and how this Rhodes Scholarship and Oxford degrees contribute to that story. And that was very, very key. So you're not going there to tell them jargons or technical language. You're really talking at their emotions, their head, their hearts, to see how beyond this thing just being technically feasible, intelligent, and smart to do, it also really greatly contributes to the success of our society. And there's I'm one of the very few people who I believe should be able to do this because look at where I'm coming from, like things I've done in the past. So this is why I should take a chance on me. So I think for me, that was very helpful because I had to now start going back to, okay, I'm talking about like making technology accessible. I'm talking about how do we understand how AI will affect like our Nigerian societies and like the bias and things like that. Um, how will this make more sense to someone, or how do you want to convince them to take a chance on me versus someone who is saying, I want to contribute to cancer research? I don't know if you get my point. Already, that is a very, very strong statement. So now, if I was going to place a bet on someone, looking at where we are in the world right now, like, please take money and go and solve cancer. Do you get my point? But for me, it was just like, oh, I'm not coming to tell you about like these fancy terms. It's like, oh, I believe technology has been pushed to the backseat for so long, and it can be a driver in our progress as a society. So I recognize that we don't have like electricity, our healthcare is in shambles, but we're not trying to solve these things the same way we'll solve it in like the 1950s. So how do we now start? So it's really being able to tell a very holistic story and tying it. So that was one key thing I feel like really helped me with my Rhodes application. And then thankfully from like school, I've always learned to like speak confidently. I think it's also something I picked up from my dad. My dad would always say like written exams, applications, you might be part to party, but just put me in that room to speak to somebody. I'll convince you. So I've always like, it's not just even about like practicing or having a story, but also saying it confidently and believing it yourself also really helps you sell it to people. Yeah, and I did that. And I think by the end, I was just like, okay, I've bought into this process. I'm going to go to Oxford. And then when they were announcing the winners, I was just uh it felt like Ewerechukwu Asaka that they announced as a Rhodes Scholar was so different from the Ewerechukwu Asaka in person now. There was that disconnect. I think it was when I was speaking to my parents later and that it now really dawned on me that, oh no, this actually like happened. Yeah. And then from getting Rhodes, the Oxford application just feels like very, very different. Not different in that they're asking you for different stuff, but you have community. Like once you get in, they're sending you emails. There's almost no course in the road, like in Oxford, that someone that you want to do in Oxford that someone in the Rhodes community hasn't done that they can't put you in contact with,
Mm,
or and you can ask questions. So it's a very different. It's not easy. It's not a walk in the park, but it's a lot more different than trying to navigate it on your
cool, 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 cool. So what is your day-to-day like currently at Oxford?
own. Day to day is very interesting because I struggled to answer this question the other day, maybe because I'm very type B. Like my friend has been saying, but for me, it's I'm doing the MBA now, so a lot of classes. Typically I have classes from like 9 to 5. Uh, so wake up classes. I don't sleep really early, so I have about an hour or two to prepare to go to classes. I'm actively trying to walk now, so I walk to class, which is about like 14 minutes. So I wake up by
Mm,
7, try to prepare, walk to class and classes. In between, there are a lot of talks and conversations I find very interesting. So like this week now, my friend is doing I won't call it a conference, but a talk on AI, can AI care, can machines care, and conversation on how AI impacts
mm,
care world. So attending things like that, I always joke about how like Oxford is very, very, very interesting. 1 minute you're in a talk listening to a Obasanjo, the next thing you're listening to like a lead actress from like Bridgerton in 1 week.
mm.
So those type of talks I really try to attend since I'm still here, and just learning what I can. And then I'm trying to go to the gym a lot more, so 45 times a week. So that's something that I'm actively trying to fit in. And coming back home, it's resting, trying to prepare for like the next day and catching up with like friends and family. And I also sadly I'm chronically online. I joke about how I study social science on the internet, so I had to be on the internet. So
Right.
sometimes just going through Twitter and things like that. Yeah. So that's like nothing really exciting, just a regular day. I know I hope it's not disappointing, but that's what my day is like.
No, it's not. It's just interesting that you would call it not exciting. Um, Edu, I think. So, what do you think is like the key thing you would say about like Oxford? Like, what this thing about Oxford has like changed everything to me. There's like a new way of seeing reality or
Mhm.
something. Is there any such thing?
So the question is because it's breaking a bit, but you're basically asking like what I think about Oxford and if it has like changed my views on anything.
Yes.
Um, I think it's changed my views a lot. One is I've learned empathy, uh, in sense that one, just giving grace to myself and giving grace to other people because it's a very, very diverse environment, like a diverse environment. So you're meeting people from different walks and different parts of life. So learning to give grace in your daily conversations and interactions with people. Also, there's the curiosity. This is like one of the very I always try to not live life with like a scarcity mindset, like, oh, this is now, I will never get this chance again. But in the sense, like this is one of the very few moments where I'm going to be very young in such an intellectually inspiring environment like this. So there's a certain level of curiosity and just like, oh, why is that? But I also recognize that when like information overload period like this, it's very easy to get overly like saturated. But there's definitely curiosity there. But I think the major thing about like my Oxford experience is it has been very refining, and I start to understand how things just don't happen. I attended like a friend's graduation ceremony where they're presenting certificates, and then someone was graduating with like a master's in like, is it applied cancer research or some very niche cancer course? And I'm like, tomorrow, if they're at the forefront of finding the cure to cancer or developing a certain vaccine, don't be surprised. These things,
Don't.
yeah, like there are investments that have gone into these things. So there's that. But I think the Oxford process has been very, very refining in teaching you how to think. There's so much focus on original and critical thinking, like original thought and critical thinking. Even the way classes are being held here, you have so much material to read. You're coming to our class to have like a conversation with like your lecturer, who's also a subject matter expert, who most times like they've probably authored one or two of the materials that you're reading. And you're having this, so it's like iron sharpening iron in a way. You're not necessarily as strong as your lecturer, but the fact that you're in a position where you can have this conversation, as opposed to someone just saying this is this and this is this and this is this, you're sort of analyzing certain topics. And I think it's also very interesting because it's the nature of what you're studying itself, where there's actually no right or wrong. And it is something that is very, very recent or things that are actually affecting us now. I would say that if you're studying something where there's a right or wrong answer, or there is um you can confidently speak about these things, it means that it might not be as recent or impactful. Obviously, it's different with like STEM courses like precision matters. But if you're arguing things about like internet regulations and technology, there's really no clear answer. So how do you position yourself to think in a way to be able to
Is it
navigate a world
is it
where it's
funny
very
that this is making me think of your dad? I mean, you mentioned him earlier that he really likes objective questions, that there is one correct
yes,
answer. That is the way you actually question.
yes.
Or what would be his opinion on something like this, for instance? Have you
I
discussed
think the
this with
first
him?
thing was when I sent him my results, I was like, a 70 is really great here, just putting it
Mm-hmm.
out now. We need to redefine what success looks like. And it's very I need to set expectations. So yeah, but I think at the core of it is still like gathering material, putting in like prep and like things like that. But yeah, the nature of the conversations are like different. And this is just, I don't know who gets to see this, but all those people that say STEM and humanities courses like don't matter, they matter. They matter, please. So I think yeah, that's one thing about Oxford, just the focus on critical thinking, original thoughts. Yeah, so it's been very, very refining. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. I think I really like what you said actually, that uh,
Mm.
because maybe probably until last year, that was when I started like moving towards what you just said now, right? Like all my life, I've always believed what I used to say is tech will save the world, right? And I believe that with every fiber of my being. That like, give me a lever and a place to stand on, and I'll move the earth. I've always believed this, right? But increasingly, and maybe the last 2 years, more than at any other point in time in history, has actually shown us that, of course, I think tech, I still believe that tech will save the world, right? But it's also important to say what kind of tech, how is the tech being built? What are the people shaping the
Yes.
policies of this sense? Are you thinking about it?
Mhm.
Is this something you want to expound on? I mean, you're the expert here.
I'm not an expert. Let's start with that. So I definitely agree with you that technology will save the world. But I think the problem is even how we define technology. I think for me, like how I see technology is like the very basic, crude definition that we have. Something that improves the quality of our lives, gives us speed, convenience, efficiency and then it's being applied in different sectors. At the core, that would definitely change the world. But I think one thing we need to start to realize is technology shapes society, society shapes technology. It's happening hand in hand. And to your point, where we need to start thinking about who's building this tech, who's building this technology, what people in the room, what kind of questions are they asking, who has access to these technologies that they're building, um, who defines what success looks like. So these are very critical questions. And for me, as like a Nigerian who grew up in Nigeria, what you typically see is that people sit in a room in Sweden, they design a music streaming app. They feel like whatever it is they're designing, and
Mm-hmm.
then they grow to a certain extent. They feel, oh, we should expand. So they come into Nigeria and then they take that product that was designed in Sweden without probably no Nigerian in the room who doesn't understand our context, our
Mm-hmm.
music stream habits, and try to market that product to us. So if you take music, for example, what that means is that they determine what genres would look like,
Mm-hmm.
how revenue will be shared, who is visible on the platform. These are algorithms already used to or have been built with patterns of listening from different places, and they're
Mm-hmm.
bringing it here. If you look at like our data and technology costs, it's not the same. Internet penetration, mobile phone penetration. So conversations are different. So we cannot build without taking into context local nuances. And that's why a lot of the products that have been very successful in Nigeria really have the homegrown context attached to it. If you
Mm-hmm.
look at, especially with like fintech, like the money points, the pay stack, the piggy vests, and the rest, even InterSwitch.
Mm-hmm.
So there really needs to be local context when you're building technology because technology is not outside of society, it's not built in a vacuum. The discriminations and the social inequalities that affect society will be carried on into technology. It's a no-brainer. It's bound to happen if you don't actively start to build and correct these things. Obviously, there'll always be bias in technology, but we need to at least start by being aware and then start to correct these things. Even when you're designing these like programs, like there was a particular case study where we were looking at how programs that are built to close the gap in technology access sometimes actively contribute to widening these gaps
Mm-hmm.
and not even actively close it. Because if I'm building like an alleviation program, who are the people that I'm giving access to? Who are the key stakeholders and who are the people
Mm-hmm.
determining who gets access to what
Mm-hmm.
resources? If you look at a world where, if you look at intersectionality, like, okay, I'm Nigerian and I'm a woman, it's also a very patriarchal society.
Mm-hmm.
So these different type of conversations start to happen. And so you have to be very aware. I know that there's no clear-cut solution, but I think awareness of the problem is at the core of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going through a website that the Oxford Internet Institute built where they looked at like chat LLM's perception of different countries and how this will probably affect their answers. I'll send it to you. And then it showed that, oh, it thinks Nigerians are one of the most stupid people.
Oh Lord. Oh
And that is
Lord.
perception. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, imagine getting an answer from something that has that
Mm-hmm.
perception.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
perception may not be might be built from something. There might be data
Mm-hmm.
point,
True.
but there's that perception that's
Mm-hmm.
not true. Continues. And the problem with technology is the scale at which you can do it. So if I am one bank teller with my tiny buyers, how many people can I possibly answer in a day? Maybe 10 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
But with technology, it's done at such a large scale. So obviously um inequalities will further like deepen. So yeah.
So we still like default to our biases
Yeah.
in the end. I think, yeah, yeah, yes, totally agree. I think what you said earlier about like, I think he brought money points to mind when you like mentioned those guys. I think when money points started, they said they want to bank the unbanked. And I think I asked a friend of mine that works there that, "Alpha, what's going on in the north that they don't really have money points there?" And the guy
Mhm.
said, "We say we want to bank the unbanked, not the
Mhm.
unbankable." And I was like, "Oh, so the northerners, you're saying they are on the unbankables."
Yeah.
So again, there's still going to be all of this. How does or what like what you are studying, for instance? And let me try to phrase the question this way, and this will probably be the last question. But yeah, let me try to get a question right. So you could take like PayPal, for instance, right? So when the service started in its early years, I think they were losing like hundreds of millions of dollars per day, or maybe tens of millions. It was a lot of money, right? That they were losing per day to hackers from Russia, I think, some from the US too. And over time, they like recruited a lot of people to come work on it. But at no point in time did they face out the entire country or maybe a state or something. They still
Mm.
had to serve those people. But you could take PayPal in Nigeria. they basically phased out Nigerians because they said, oh, there's some sort of there's fraud going on, and it doesn't matter if we can phase out the entire place. Now you have Paga trying to like say, okay, now we want to. I don't know if you saw that Paga's partnered with PayPal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nigerians are really mad about
Yeah.
that. The CEO gets dragged like daily.
Every day, yeah.
Now, I think yesterday I went on Twitter and someone said, Alpha, nobody don't drag this guy today. And then people started dragging him. So uh, the I think the question here is how does what you are working on, what you're studying, how does it
Mm-hmm.
maybe move maybe the world towards like a more perfect union? How does it even out? How does it attempt to even do that? Does it?
I think it does. But yes, going to the question around, because you started from like PayPal, Paga. I think
Hmm.
it's complex. So
Okay.
it's like it's a business
Hmm.
where they've whatever calculations they've done, they sort of recognize that the gains from being in this market probably outweighs us a lot more than the losses here, or in the long run, they believe that it's going to pay. Um, so there's that. But then with what like I've studied, like trying to understand how technology affects society and vice versa, I think it's very key that we need people to study this thing, especially from an African point of view, because we're at such an interesting place where we've been consumers for so long, at least on the global scale.
Hmm.
We need to start moving to a point where we start to design our own solutions with nuance. But I think most importantly is there's this conversation about digital colonialism that has been going on, where it's like you look at like how your data is being used. You look at who gets to the power asymmetries, who gets to define what on like the internet, or like who gets to define how these technologies are used, like the technology policies, even down to the resources. So if you look at what's going on with like in the Congo, with like children mining for cobalt, and it's like being exploited and things like that, like the labor. So there are different angles to this conversation where it obviously cannot just be solved from a technology point of view. So we need to start to understand what are the different geopolitical factors that affect this thing, the societal factors. If you look at, for example, Nigeria is a large market, but our purchasing power is not so great. So anybody coming into this market is making like probably a future, an investment in the future that we have numbers, or maybe we can get to the scale of India at some point. So there are so many factors, and I think it's very critical to start to understand these factors. And I think there are already people doing these things, but I think we just need to start adding like talking a lot more about like it from an African point of view. So yeah, I definitely think it's very, very important. Also, I think because of the nature of the problems that we have, where it's like we barely have electricity. So I'll be very angry if someone is coming to tell me about AI or data centers and things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
So it doesn't make sense on the surface.